Every so often I see a tweet or a Reddit post or something like that that says, why are there no good comic book channels? Or maybe like, so-and-so is the only good comic book channel. I saw one recently about a month ago that said Comic Tropes is the only good comic channel. And no disrespect to Comic Tropes, but that isn't true. And at the moment there is some controversy surrounding a kind of notable comic book YouTube channel. I'm not going to weigh in on that, but some of the responses I've seen to that are, oh, there goes the only good comic book channel. And it kind of really bums me out. I get it, there's a lot of slop out there, and there are, some of the most well-known comic book channels are, let's say Wikipedia recap kind of channels, or they are story recap channels with no real criticism going into it. I've worked my arse off here on YouTube since 2017, making comic book content that I'm proud of. And so that's one reason it bums me out, but then also I look around and I've got tons of friends, not just friends as well, but other creators who I'm not necessarily friends with, who are making some amazing stuff. So look, whether YouTube isn't showing it to you because maybe it's not mainstream enough, or you've just decided that there are no good comic book channels because you haven't actually done the work and gone out looking for it, because it is out there. So I'm going to make it real easy for you. I have put together a list of around 20 comic book YouTube channels that I think are definitely worth your time. Hey heroes, I'm Josh from Panels to Pixels, and there are a lot of good comic book channels, so let's talk about them. So maybe first of all I should give a bit of an introduction to who I am, why I'm qualified to talk about this. It's possible that this video has landed on your feed and you're not subscribed to Panels to Pixels. Maybe the clickbait thumbnail has worked, I don't know. But I've been making comic book and superhero related videos here on YouTube since 2017. And for some of that time, it's been my full-time job. My content has been featured on comicbook.com, comicbookresources.com. I've also presented some videos for What Culture Comics. So I do feel somewhat qualified to talk about this. And in this video, I want to speak candidly and give my honest opinions here, because it is a fact that shit rises to the top here on YouTube. The kind of lowest common denominator gets the top. I think that's the case in any art form, but especially here on YouTube, you get those Wikipedia channels that I talked about, or the kind of, going through a comic panel by panel and reading you a bedtime story. I don't know why anybody would want to watch that. So here's the criteria for this list. I'm going to be featuring passionate, hardworking, well-informed creators making really high quality stuff, and also promoting kind of inclusive and safe spaces for all comic book fans. That is the Panels to Pixels guarantee in this video. I'm only going to be talking about people who I think are good people, because there are a lot of bad people talking about comic books out there in bad faith. But look, this isn't an exhaustive list by any means, and if your favourite creator isn't on the list, it's either because maybe I'm not aware of them, or I am aware of them and I'm not really a fan of them, I don't feel comfortable promoting them, or in at least a few cases there are creators who I've had private beefs with, so I'm not going to talk about them in this video, but that's none of my business. Oh, cherry flavoured tea, by the way, that is my first recommendation before we get into any of the actual channels. So let's kick things off with a creator called Alex Lennon, and he's got quite a big subscriber base, so he doesn't need the promotion from me. His videos get some crazy views, and actually, in the grand scheme of things, he's still quite new to the kind of comic tube scene, if you want to call it that. Yeah, I remember first becoming aware of Alex a couple of years ago, and there was kind of a palpable sense amongst some of my other creator friends in this space of like, who the fuck is this guy? Coming in and getting 3 million views on a video about Speedball. Nobody wants to watch videos about Speedball. If I made a video about Speedball, I guarantee it would be the lowest ranking video on my channel. But Alex just seemed to come in like a wrecking ball, Miley Cyrus style, and just smash all expectations of how well a comic book video could do on this platform. But I also think he set a new standard for quality. I don't want to knock Alex at all because he was successful. Certainly the first time I sat down to watch one of his videos, I was skeptical, but immediately it became apparent that he's just operating on another level. His videos are really creative, he's super talented, and it's really nice to see a creator like that get rewarded with these big views. He definitely deserves it. It seems like Alex Lennon kind of goes in for those niche, like obscure characters. He also does these really big sprawling kind of definitive histories of certain characters. There's something on there for everyone. There's one which is Superman versus Mr. Bean, which is really entertaining. Again, he's really creative with the kind of stuff that he's making. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't threatened by Alex. He's younger than me, cooler than me, funnier than me, and more talented and successful than me. So, but you know, good luck to him. Look, I did say I was going to be candid in this video. I'm just giving my honest opinions here. And next up, we're going to talk about a channel called Casually Comics. So Casually Comics is hosted by Sasha, and true to the name of the channel, it's very casual, informal chat about comics and superhero media. But it's really diverse, and her passion for all these kind of like little niche subjects really comes across in the videos. And again, she's rewarded for that with some pretty good views. But just because the videos are informal doesn't mean they're not informed. Sasha seems really well informed about everything she's talking about. She's got a wealth of comic book knowledge, and it just feels like sitting down to have a chat with your super nerdy friend. It's nice. And next up, because we're going alphabetically here, is Comic Book Herald. And Comic Book Herald is better known as a website, I think, with kind of like articles and things like that. It's most well known, at least to me, for the reading orders. You know, you search up any comic book character and reading order, you're probably going to get Comic Book Herald as the top search result. I first became aware of Comic Book Herald a long time ago. It might have been over 10 years ago, to be honest, if it's been going that long, because it was around the time of the first Avengers movie in 2012. That was when I was getting back into comics. After a long absence since the 90s, essentially. And yeah, I just found those reading orders invaluable. There's one which is a kind of a beginner's guide to Marvel from 1998 onwards. But I'm not talking about the site necessarily, I'm talking about the site's creator, Dave Busing, and his YouTube channel, which is also called Comic Book Herald. And on there, he does weekly live shows, he does interviews with comics creators, and also, if you're a fan of the Krakoa era of X-Men, Dave Busing is your guy. He's like a Jonathan Hickman super fan, and he's got a lot of videos on his channel kind of delving into all of that stuff, decoding it all. It's all way above my head. Now, I don't know Dave personally, we've interacted a few times, but he just seems like a really warm person. I really like watching his videos and also listening to the podcast he does with Zach and Charlotte. It's called My Marvelous Year. It's a definite recommend for me. It's kind of a reading club that goes through the history of Marvel Comics. And, you know, I talked at the start about these kind of like safe spaces, and this just feels like a really cozy safe space where, you know, all three of them on this podcast might have different opinions, and they can very openly talk about things from, you know, they're obviously dealing with comics from the past that might have problematic elements, but they're able to discuss them in a way that, you know, doesn't resort to pearl clutching or screeching or I don't know. They just seem like very chill, very level-headed, very respectful people, and that really draws me into a channel like that. Next up is Comic Drake, and you probably already know Comic Drake. He's one of the biggest channels here on YouTube that deals specifically with comic book stuff. And I dare say, again, this might get me in trouble, I'm being quite candid here, but I think that Drake is the best mainstream comic book channel here on YouTube, the best of the big ones. And I say that because Drake maybe goes for those more mainstream topics and, you know, the kind of like ridiculous superhero stuff. And he kind of draws you in with a little bit of those, you know, very clickbaity titles, which I don't consider clickbait an insult at all. That just means you're good at marketing. But he draws you in with all that stuff and then backs it up with passion and knowledge and just great insight into the stuff he talks about. And also, for what it's worth, Drake just seems like a really nice guy. He's always been very kind to me, even when I was like an absolute nobody here on YouTube. And I've actually discovered a lot of smaller comic book channels because of Drake's recommendation. So top guy, great ambassador for this little space. Yeah, he deserves all the success. Next up is a channel who isn't exactly hurting for views, but I'm glad to promote them here because I think they make some really high quality stuff and, again, really informed stuff. But I'm burying the lead here, that is Comic Tropes. Yes, you might already know Comic Tropes. I mentioned him in the intro. He's someone I frequently see get kind of like lauded as one of the best comic book channels, and with good reason. The show's hosted by Chris, and he goes for some of those more maybe niche subjects or maybe more historical stuff. He seems very artist focused. I know he's an artist himself. He's done some professional comics work. And it seems to me that he covers a wide range of subjects within comics, not just superheroes. He does indie stuff. I've seen him do some manga stuff, and it's everything from the kind of the golden age of comics onwards. And again, being quite candid, I must confess, I don't watch that much Comic Tropes, and it's only because there's a little bit of crossover, I feel, between the kind of stuff that he makes and the kind of stuff that I make. And I'm always a bit wary about watching it because I'm frightened that it might influence me in some unconscious way and I'll end up ripping him off and that would just be very embarrassing for me. But by all accounts, he's a top bloke I know back in the day, I think the reason the show is called Comic Tropes is because he would focus on a particular artist or a creator and what are the tropes of their work. I remember I saw he did a Rob Liefeld video, and for every time in a Rob Liefeld comic he saw the small feet or the pouches or the big guns or the cybernetic eye, he would have to eat a chili pepper or take a shot of some disgusting alcoholic beverage or something like that. I don't think he does that anymore, but that was the original format of the show, and it was very entertaining. I hope he brings that back, to be honest, because that brings some of that kind of old YouTube kind of style content into the present day. Next up, I've got to shout out a good friend of mine, Diego Reviews. Maybe this is a little bit of nepotism because we're friends, but he makes comics adjacent content, so it's not necessarily strictly comic book, although he has made comic book content as well, which I'm going to talk about. But for the most part, if you're interested in kind of superhero video games, Diego shows my love of kind of crappy licensed superhero games and horror games, so he's making a lot of that kind of superhero stuff. He's also, you might know him as the creator of Spawntember, the Spawn themed month that was snubbed by Todd McFarlane when he created his own Spawnuary. Spawntember sounds better, right? And there's no AI involved in Spawntember. But I digress. If you're a fan of superhero media in general, then Diego's channel is definitely worth checking out. He has made some comic book content as well. He's kind of drawn to those kind of weird licensed titles. He did stuff on the Friday the 13th horror comics, as well as the kind of crossover, is it Jason, somebody else, and Ash from The Evil Dead. Is it Leatherface? I don't remember. Freddy Krueger. It's Freddy Krueger, maybe. Go and check that video out. It's really good. I hope Diego's going to forgive me because this is probably the most shambolic recommendation on this list. Next up is kind of a smaller, more art-focused channel from Elsa Charretier. That's a French name. I don't speak French. I've probably absolutely butchered that, so forgive me. If, like me, you are into the kind of process side of making comics, especially the art side of making comics, this is the channel for you. Elsa is a professional comics artist, and these videos are just like amazingly high quality. Like, I'm so envious of the cinematography and the lighting. They're just beautifully well made. And in these videos, Elsa breaks down the anatomy of a comic book, if you like. Not anatomy in terms of body parts necessarily, but like how the comic book is structured, the panel layouts, the kind of the motion and things like that. One video that I would really recommend checking out, I think this was the first one I watched, is a breakdown of Hawkeye by artist David Aja. And she does a really good job breaking down the action in that comic and the kind of kinetic energy and all the things that get me really excited about comics. And seeing it explained by someone who actually knows what they're talking about is very valuable. Elsa, unfortunately, hasn't uploaded in about a year. I mean, unfortunately for us, the audience, I'm sure it's because she's busy making actual comics. But what's on the channel currently is just, you know, a treasure trove of great content to get stuck into. Next up is a channel that I hope this isn't a backhanded compliment to say is the best kept secret on ComicTube, and that is For Every Kind of Geek. This show is hosted by a guy called Doug. He just makes very thoughtful video essays. Like, these are video essays in the true meaning of the word. They're beautifully made. They are really well edited actually, and really well written. And he just puts a lot of himself, a lot of his own passion, but also a lot of comic book knowledge into every video he makes. Doug often posts like teasers and behind the scenes of the videos that he's working on, and you can tell that his approach to this is as a piece of art, not just, you know, a YouTube video. These are pieces of art to him, and he approaches them as if he's making like a feature film. Yeah, just the level of care that he puts into every single one is astonishing. The most recent one on the channel is all about giant size X-Men, I believe, and in the past he's done stuff like Wade and Wieringo's Fantastic Four. That was a really good watch. I know that he's an Iron Man fanatic. He's made a lot of Iron Man videos. This is a comic book channel I really want to see blow up in the future, and as testament to that, Doug actually said some not very nice things about me on Twitter recently, and it was quite difficult for me because I'm such a fan of his videos, but now I have to kind of put that aside because I don't want to stop watching those videos. They're amazing. So you know a channel is good when the host can shit talk you and you won't unsubscribe. Maybe I'm being a bit too honest in this video. We'll see if this makes the edit. Moving swiftly on to somebody who's never said anything nasty about me as far as I can tell. Godzilla Mendoza. Again, a channel that if you know about me and you know about comic book stuff here on YouTube, you're probably well aware of Godzilla Mendoza. Xavier makes videos on a wide range of subjects that he is passionate about. It's not always just comic books, but there is kind of that like superhero current that runs through everything he does. So whether it's video games or movies or cartoons or whatever it may be. He has made some comic book videos as well. He did one quite famously about Nick Spencer's Spider-Man run, I think it was. But here's the key to it all and why it's worth your time as a comic book fan, is even when he's talking about a movie or a video game, he's bringing that knowledge that he has, and he has a wealth of knowledge about comic books. He's one of the most knowledgeable people I know about particularly characters like Spider-Man and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's his jam. So Xavier definitely knows his stuff. I've had a few conversations with him over the years. I've appeared in some of his videos. He's appeared in mine. We've done some live shows together. In fact, we started to do a podcast together with Diego a while ago, but that didn't go anywhere. But whenever I talk to him, I'm always kind of like, wow, you are an encyclopedia of this stuff. He just pulls out some of the most obscure references to a character's comic book history. He's a very smart guy, a very talented guy. I remember watching him way back before I ever started my YouTube channel, and then I kind of, as I got to know him a little bit, I realized how much younger he was and realized that, whoa, when I was like in my mid-20s watching him, he was like high school age and making this like amazing content. It's really quite riling, to be honest. But next up is a YouTuber who needs no introduction, in my opinion, Matt Draper. And I'm always, ever since I've known Matt Draper, I've been tempted. I hear his name in my head as the Ridge Racer start screen. Matt Draper. I'm sorry, Matt. Matt is one of the most prolific creators I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. Honestly, like there was a time when he was just putting out weekly videos to such a high standard, and I was like, how is this humanly possible that he does this? It's amazing. If you're not familiar with Matt's channel, then I have just introduced you to hundreds of hours, maybe thousands of hours of content that you could never get to the bottom of. I'm sure you could literally get to the bottom of it, but there's so many videos that Matt has made on so many subjects. A lot of it was comic books. I hope I'm not insulting Matt by putting him on a list of comic book YouTubers, because I know he's tried to put a little bit of distance between him and comic books in the last year or so. But the fact is that there's so much stuff back there. You can check out his videos on Daredevil, on Hellboy, on some of the weird crossovers like Batman vs Predator. That was a favourite of mine that he's done. And in my opinion, Matt Draper set a new standard for video editing. He certainly pushed me to get better at video editing and to kind of turn the quality of my videos up to 11. But I might be doing Matt an injustice there by talking about just his editing. It's not just flashy editing. The writing is so thoughtful. He writes such personal, kind of true critiques of whatever he's talking about, whether it's horror films or comic books or weird 80s movies. Matt's a really cool guy. He's been a huge inspiration to me. I think you can go back through my videos and see how much he's inspired me over the years. I think it was Matt Draper plus another YouTuber who I'm going to talk about in a second, who made me realize that videos about comic books on YouTube could be art, not just criticism. It's, this idea of criticism as art. And just massively inspiring to me. So speaking of YouTube videos as art, serendipitously, this comes next in the alphabet, is NerdSync. Again, maybe a channel that doesn't need much introduction if you're already into comic book stuff on YouTube. And in fact, I think Scott would maybe grimace at the idea of being associated with comic book YouTube, because he's another creator who I think has tried to put a little bit of distance between what he used to do and what he does now. And, that's absolutely fine. I respect that. But the fact is that all those videos are still there as far as I'm aware. And they are really, really valuable, insightful, insanely well researched, insanely well edited, just really high value videos about comic books. I've been a fan of Scott from NerdSync since all the way back when he was making videos in his dorm room at university, and he had hair. Sorry, Scott. And again, that was around the time that the first Avengers film came out, or maybe a little bit after, and I was online trying to re-immerse myself in all of this comic book culture. And NerdSync was a channel that happily I found very early on and kind of filled in a lot of those knowledge gaps for me. But then as Scott evolved and as the channel evolved, the editing went up until it was getting into like feature film level editing and production values and cinematography and just really beautiful videos that I was like, I want to make videos like this. Like, that was so inspiring to me. I would say that NerdSync more than any other channel is the reason that my channel exists. I wouldn't have started without seeing someone kind of come on leaps and bounds creatively and in the art that they were making here on YouTube. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to learn how to do that. It was so exciting. Another channel that was very valuable to me at that time when I was getting back into all this stuff was Owen Likes Comics. And Owen should be your first stop if you're kind of new to comic book YouTube, or also if you are just looking for kind of broad overviews of the history of these kind of like tentpole stories from Marvel and DC. Maybe broad is a poor choice of words there. I don't mean any offense by that. I just mean that Owen is very good at giving you that top-down kind of perspective on a particular comic book story or a particular period of Marvel history or DC history or a particular character or something like that. In fact, when I've read one of those iconic or classic Marvel or DC stories for the first time, the first place I usually go is YouTube, and I type in the name of that story, and Owen's video usually comes up, and I watch it because he'll tell you, you know, how was this idea conceived, which creators were involved, how it landed in the context of everything that was going on at the company at that time, or where it lands in the continuity at that time. And just presents it so well and so academically. And I say academically because I believe that Owen has a doctorate in history, maybe, if I'm getting that right. And so he is really bringing a lot of that kind of academic approach to his videos. And also, I believe he's just recently gone full-time with this, with the channel. So that's really exciting because he's been putting out all these amazing videos while he's been studying, and he's been in full-time education. And I'm so excited to see what he does next on the channel now that he can devote his full brain power to it. So Owen, a very lovely guy, one of my fellow English comic tubers, and I hope I'm not doxing him by saying that for a period of time, this isn't the case now, but for a period of time we lived like 10-15 minutes away, and at no point did we ever meet up, and that's something I really regret to this day, because we could have done an in-person collaboration or something, or just hung out. It would have been fun. So we're up to P in the alphabet, and it would be remiss of me not to promote myself here because, you know, I'm shameless. Panels 2 Pixels is the name of my channel, and I make kind of nostalgic comic book and superhero content, particularly kind of focused on the 90s and the early 2000s, which was the era that I grew up reading comics. My tagline for the last few years has been, I make videos about old superhero junk, and that, you know, I'm trying to be comically flippant about it, but that is really what it is. I consider the stuff that I talk about to be kind of weird ephemera, or weird kind of like, you know, whether it's toys or it's weird promotional stuff, or, you know, licensed tie-in games or cartoons of questionable quality. And in the last year, the last couple of years, I've really focused on talking about 90s comics and the kind of the image revolution and a lot of those indie stuff and the age of gimmick covers and stuff like that. I hope this isn't too shameless to say. I'm not trying to be opportunistic here, but if you are mourning the loss of a certain comic book channel that one of the creators has recently been alleged to have acted inappropriately, my channel kind of occupies some of the same space, you know, certainly talking about the same era of comics, certainly kind of celebrating the schlock and the trying to find the artistry behind the kind of gimmick age. I'm definitely more interested in dissecting the art side of it than the story side of it, but within that I try and delve into the history of things and kind of just pull up obscure, fun things. You know, everything I do is really passion driven. I like to follow my own interests. And another thing that's really important to me with the channel is just quality, like making really high quality stuff, making as high quality as I can as an independent one-man show. That's enough shameless self-promo from me. Let's talk about a channel called Salazar Night. Now, one of my favorite things on YouTube is when a channel is so hyper-focused on one niche, because that brings a lot of value to the content. You know that this person is A, passionate, and B, an expert. And that's definitely the case with Salazar Night, which is a whole YouTube channel dedicated to just Batman. And within that, there is Batman movies and Batman video games, cartoons, but especially comic books. This is like, I've learned so much about Batman's comic book history from just this one channel. Actually, last year, I, like a lot of people, got Batman fever because of Michael Keaton's return, and I was just trying to like immerse myself in as much Batman content as I could, and I found Salazar Night's channel really valuable for that. It got me caught up on everything, not as a substitute for reading the comics, I might add, but as a companion to all that stuff, forgetting the historical context and some of the stuff that, you know, isn't immediately obvious. I really like this channel's year-by-year history of the Dark Knight that they've done, which is so comprehensive, it's incredible. You know, you find like 1994 in Batman history, that video, and it's not just giving you the main beats of what happened in the main Batman comic or even Detective Comics. It's giving you everything that happened in Batman and Detective Comics and in all the side comics, Shadow of the Bat and Legends of the Dark Knight, and every miniseries and every crossover, as well as movies and video games and cartoons and toys, whatever else. But the thing that makes me so happy about this channel is that they were chugging along for a long time, and I think because it was so hyper focused and so niche, they weren't getting the views that those videos deserved. They were doing okay, but those videos are so high quality, like really, really high quality video essays with great voiceover and great editing. And it seems like in the last 6 months or so, the rest of the world has caught on to how good these videos are, because the views are just going up and up and up. And that makes me so happy, because when you see a creator like that pouring themselves into their work, and to see it get rewarded like that, it's so gratifying. So congrats to Salazar Knight, really happy for you. Next up is a channel from a very good friend of mine, Matty, over at Stoked. And Stoked used to be called The Game Show, and they focused on gaming content from like the 2000s era. You know, if you look at my channel as like me regressing to my childhood in the 90s, I think Stoked is Matty regressing to his young adulthood in the 2000s. But about a year ago, Matty made the great decision, in my opinion, to change the name from The Game Show to Stoked, and kind of no longer limit himself just to talking about video games. He's really started to follow his nose a little bit, follow his passion, follow his heart, and talk about, you know, all the things that he is passionate or interested about. So in that time, he's made videos about Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Star Trek and Mars Attacks, and a video about the best Spawn toys, which was one of his most popular videos last year. Just beautifully well-made videos, with lovely B-roll and lighting and stuff like that. He's such a cool guy. But crucially to this video, Matty is a huge comic book fan. He's into a lot of the same kind of comics that I am, and he has made some comic book videos on his channel in the last year. Recently, he's made 2 of what I hope will be many videos about Judge Dredd, and these are just fabulous, phenomenally well-made videos. Everybody I know who's watched these videos has raved about them. So if you're into comics, and particularly if you're into 2000 AD, British comics, Judge Dredd, or just, you know, weird dystopian sci-fi comics, you've got to go check these out. I think everyone should check them out, because he's making comic book video essays that are celebratory and elevatory and revelatory and every other kind of Tory you can think of. Well, you know, the Tories certainly come up when you talk about Judge Dredd. Okay, we're getting there. Are you still with me? Next up is Strip Panel Naked. This is another fellow UK-based comic book YouTuber, which is always great to see, honestly. A guy called Hassan, and he is a professional comics letterer, an award-winning comics letterer, in fact, and he's bringing a lot of that knowledge to his videos. He's also the editor of a magazine called Panel by Panel, I think it is, which annoyingly sometimes comes up when you search for Panels to Pixels, so I kind of I have a little bit of a grudge about that. But Strip Panel Naked is one of those cool kind of indie comic book YouTubers who you know, the people who are a fan are super fans. And it's a bit more of an academic breakdown of comic book art and, again, some process stuff, the kind of anatomy of a comic book page. And again, you know, Hassan is bringing his comics industry knowledge to some of that. I've heard of people studying illustration and design at universities and things like that, getting told by their lecturers to watch Strip Panel Naked on YouTube. So that's a pretty good endorsement, I suppose. Up next, we've got another channel that kind of hyper-focuses on one subject. So if you are a fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, then the Turtle Nexus is the channel for you. So I've mentioned in some of my videos before that I feel like I am the lost generation for the Ninja Turtles. I was born too late for the original cartoon and toys, probably born too early for the 2003 reboot. So for me, I was the Street Sharks generation. But having said that, there is something very appealing to me about the 90s stuff and the kind of weirdo Image Comics run in the mid-90s and stuff like that. So over the last year, actually, I've been trying to get more into the Ninja Turtles. I've been reading a lot. I've been watching the movies, even the Michael Bay ones. I've been watching the cartoons, getting into the toys and stuff like that. And the Turtle Nexus is a channel that has been invaluable for me for getting into all this stuff, getting my head around all these different eras of the Ninja Turtles, all the different characters. There are so many Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles characters, and they all kind of originate from different places. Some of them originate in the toy line, some of them originate in the comics, some of them in the movies because the people who made the movie didn't have the right to the cartoon characters and whatever else. So the Turtle Nexus has become my encyclopedia for figuring it all out. If I see a toy design that I really like Ray Fillet, I can be like, well, where does that character come from? And they'll have a dedicated video about who designed that character and where they showed up in the Archie comics and the cartoons and how they were a toy design first or whatever it might be. Actually, I saw Matty from Stoked, who I talked about earlier. He recently posted a link to the Turtle Nexus on his YouTube community page. So it's great because they are a small channel. So it's great to see that they are getting into other people's algorithms who are into this same kind of stuff. And I hope that more people can watch their videos. The penultimate YouTuber on this list is Troyoboyo17. Again, a comics adjacent channel. They talk about movies, they talk about video games, although they have made dedicated comic book videos, including a fantastic reading recommendation video for Batman. I think Troyoboyo17 is best known for the fan rewrite series of videos, which are really cool, really clever kind of way of turning fan fiction into YouTube videos. And back in the day when they were just starting out, they printed off the character on a piece of paper, cut it out, put it on a lolly stick and moved it around, animated it by hand. Just really fun, inventive videos. Troy's a very funny guy. He seems like a very sweet guy. I've had a few interactions with him over the years. And yeah, it's just really cool to see someone kind of having such great success by pouring their ideas and their passions into something. They're not just parroting information from other sources. This is their creative vision and their creative passion coming across in every video. There's some channel lore there about Baja Blasts that I don't really understand because I'm English. But yeah, Troyoboyo17, just really chill videos about all this kind of like nerdy superhero stuff that we're all into. And last but by no means least, I want to introduce you to the Watchtower database if you're not already a subscriber. Again, I love a channel that is niche, that just becomes the authority on a certain subject. And for the Watchtower database, that is the DC animated universe. And maybe if you don't know that much about the DC animated universe, you might think, oh, that is a niche. That's a small kind of subset of superhero media to focus on. But the DC animated universe is so vast. The subject is so dense and rich and there for the mining that they've made a massive success of it over the years. So if you are specifically interested in Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series, the Justice League cartoon, Batman Beyond, Static Shock, and a bunch of other stuff that I'm blanking on right now, plus all the tie-in comics to that stuff, tie-in games to all that stuff, I don't know why you would go anywhere else on YouTube to get that kind of content because they've got it covered. And unlike a lot of the other channels on this list, which are just one-man shows, this is a whole team of insanely talented people making such high-quality videos, it makes me sick, honestly. In fact, everyone on this list makes me sick with making such high-quality videos. Please, make your videos worse so that mine look better. I beg thee. Alright, I've rambled on for a long time here. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found at least one new channel to check out from this video. And again, if your favourite wasn't on the list, it wasn't necessarily a slight from me. Let me know in the comments down below. Recommend them to other people. We need to kind of build a community around these channels and support these independent creators. It's really important that you support them rather than, I'm just going to say it, the big content mill type channels out there. I've been Josh from Panels Pixels, and if you're interested in hearing more from me, check out my ranking of some of my favourite Batman adaptations to find out what I believe is the best Batman adaptation by clicking the video on screen now. I will see you over there.